A group of cops thought they were dealing with just another teenager, until she made one phone call that would change everything. What will happen when the truth comes out? Let us know in the comments section below. Brandy Newsome hated the question more than she hated gym class. Wait, are you related to Julian Newsome? Every time someone asked, she would smile politely, nod, and say something like, "Yeah, he's my dad," like it meant nothing. But it meant everything. It meant eyes watching her, waiting for her to mess up. It meant teachers who graded harder just to avoid the appearance of favoritism. It meant students whispering behind her back, "Of course she's class president. Look who her dad is." It meant never knowing if she earned her place, or if people were just afraid to tell her no. She pulled the hood of her sweatshirt tighter around her head and walked faster, her backpack thudding against her lower back with each step. The sun had already dipped behind the rooftops, and Brandy's sneakers crunched softly on the sidewalk as she passed darkened storefronts on the edge of East Hollow's quiet downtown. The street was nearly empty. A few blocks back, her best friend Taylor had peeled off toward her house, waving goodbye and telling her to text when she got home. But Brandy had insisted on taking the long way. Not because it was safer, but because it passed the new mural they'd painted on the side of the library, the one with Malcolm X and Toni Morrison, and a huge sunflower blooming out of a black child's notebook. She liked to stop there, just for a second, just to feel like she belonged somewhere. She never made it that far. A loud chirp cracked through the silence, then the crunch of tires. Red and blue lights flashed against the windows of a nail salon. A voice boomed, "Hey, stop right there." She froze. A white cruiser pulled up beside her. The passenger window rolled down. A spotlight clicked on, flooding her face in harsh white light. Brandy blinked, heart pounding. Two officers, one driving, the other, the one speaking, already stepping out of the vehicle, hand resting near his belt. She didn't run. She didn't flinch. She didn't move. "Evening," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Is there a problem?" "Where are you coming from?" the officer asked. He was in his 40s, maybe, with a tired face and the kind of tone that made her skin crawl. Cold, calculating. "Basketball practice," Brandy said. She nodded at the school gym bag hanging from her shoulder. "East Hollow High. I'm just walking home." "I'm 17. You got anything with your name on it?" "My school ID's in my bag." "Let's see it." Brandy hesitated. Her hands were in the front pocket of her hoodie. She knew better than to move fast. "I'm going to reach into my bag," she said slowly, her voice quiet. "Is that okay?" The officer didn't answer. He just gave a half shrug, like he didn't care either way. She moved slowly, pulling the zipper open, then froze again when the other door of the cruiser opened and the second officer stepped out. This one looked younger, but his eyes were hard, and he was already unfastening the strap on his taser. She never made it to her school ID. The first officer grabbed her arm. "Hey!" Before she could react, he twisted it behind her back, pushing her against the hood of the cruiser. The metal was cold. Her cheek slammed against it, her breath caught in her throat. "I didn't do anything." "Stop resisting." Eventually in Drago, "I'm not." The younger officer rushed forward, grabbing her legs as if she might bolt, slamming her down harder against the car. Pain exploded in her side. Something popped in her wrist, she screamed. But they didn't stop. They shouted over her, called her combative, said she was being non-compliant. One of them used the word aggressive. Another said she looked like someone who'd been involved in a robbery earlier that day. Don't even... Like a boy, she cried out between sobs. None of it mattered. They didn't see Brandy Newsome. They saw a black body in a hoodie, alone on a sidewalk after dark. And they didn't care who she was, until she choked out 5 words that stopped both officers in their tracks. "Call my dad, Julian Newsome." The name dropped like a brick. The older officer stiffened. Julian Newsome, as in, "Yes," she gasped, tears streaking her cheeks. "He's my father, the Attorney General." For a moment, neither man moved. Then the younger one looked panicked. "No way, are you serious?" "Call him," Brandy snapped, voice shaking with rage now, not fear. "Call him. Right. Now." The hand on her back lifted. The pressure on her wrists eased slightly. The older one whispered something under his breath, then turned back toward the car. Brandy slid down the side of the cruiser, landing on the pavement, cradling her wrist, chest heaving. She wanted to disappear. She wanted to explode. She wanted to scream loud enough that every single person in the city could hear her. Because they didn't stop because they realized she was innocent. They stopped because of her last name. And that's when Brandy knew. The rules were never meant to protect her. Not really. Only the power behind her name ever had. And in that moment, something inside her cracked open. Because now, she was going to use it, even if it meant setting the whole system on fire. Julian Newsome nearly dropped his coffee when his cell phone buzzed on the marble countertop. He was standing in the kitchen of their brownstone, still in his dress shirt from a fundraiser he had just left early. Brandy hadn't texted that she was home yet, and that made him uneasy. She always checked in. Every time. It wasn't about overparenting. It was their unspoken agreement, born after countless conversations over the years about safety, race, and how the world saw her. But this wasn't her. The screen read, "Private number." He hesitated, then answered. Julian Newsome speaking. "Sir, this is Officer Marconi with the East Hollow Police Department." There was a pause, an awkward, stiff hesitation that immediately told Julian everything was wrong. He walked to the sink, trying to keep his voice steady. "What's happened to my daughter? We had a situation earlier this evening involving a juvenile female, possible mistaken identity. She identified herself as Brandy Newsome. You put your hands on her?" "Sir, she matched the description. Let me make something very clear. If one hair on her head is out of place, you're going to need a very expensive attorney, and not one from your department." Another pause. This time longer. "She's safe, sir. We're arranging for her to be picked up." "You're damn right you are," Julian said, already grabbing his keys. "And when I get there, don't say a word until my lawyer arrives." He hung up and was out the door before his heartbeat caught up. Brandy sat in a small room with stained tile floors and buzzing fluorescent lights. Her wrist was now wrapped in an elastic bandage from the paramedic who finally looked her in the eye. She hadn't spoken in 20 minutes, not since they brought her here, not since they let her go from the hood of the cruiser and started pretending it had all been a misunderstanding. A mistake. A miscommunication. It was amazing how fast they switched tones. The younger officer, Michaels, had started stammering apologies like they could glue her dignity back together with sorries. The older one, Marconi, barely said a word. He just muttered things like, "These streets are unpredictable," and "We're all just doing our best." Brandy didn't care what he said. She'd seen the look on his face before he knew who she was, cold, dismissive, like she wasn't a person at all. Now they offered her bottled water, asked if she wanted a snack. She said nothing. Silence wasn't just a protest, it was armor. The secretary knocked once on the door frame. "Brandy, your father's here." She looked up for the first time. Julian came in like a storm in a suit. His eyes scanned her quickly, wrist, face, the redness in her cheeks, the trembling in her hands. He walked over and crouched down in front of her. "I'm here," he said softly. "I'm so sorry this happened to you." Brandy didn't respond. Her lip quivered for a moment, but she bit it, held it down. He reached out, gently resting a hand on her knee. "They touched you?" he asked. She nodded once, then again, and suddenly her mouth opened, but words didn't come out, just the sound of her breath trying to fight its way through the pain in her chest. Julian stood up slowly, looked at the secretary. "I want the arresting officers in this room. Now." The woman blinked. "Sir, I don't care where they are. Get them." Michaels and Marconi entered 3 minutes later. Marconi looked like he was trying to appear composed. Michaels couldn't meet anyone's eyes. Julian didn't raise his voice. "My daughter has a sprained wrist. She has bruises on her back and shoulder, and you still haven't told me why she was stopped in the first place." "She matched the description of a robbery suspect," Marconi replied. "Dark hoodie, black female, athletic build." "That's not a description. That's half the student body at East Hollow." She resisted. "Did she, officer? Or were you just afraid of a confident black girl who asked questions before obeying your every word?" Marconi opened his mouth, but Julian kept talking. "She's a straight-A student. She's on the honor roll. She's never skipped class, never missed curfew, and has never even had a disciplinary referral. And tonight, she was thrown onto a police cruiser like an animal." "Sir, we didn't know who she was," Michaels blurted. Julian turned to him. "Would it have mattered if she was nobody's daughter?" Silence. That silence was louder than shouting, and Brandy, still seated, finally looked at them both, eyes red but dry. "You didn't ask me a single real question," she said. "You didn't give me a chance. You didn't see me. You saw my skin and my hoodie and decided I was a threat." Julian didn't interrupt. He let her speak. "And when I said my dad was Julian Newsome, that's the only moment you flinched. Not when I screamed. Not when I cried. Not when I told you I hadn't done anything. Just when you realized you might be in trouble." Marconi folded his arms. "Look, it wasn't personal." Brandy stood up. "That's the problem. It's never personal to you." Julian moved beside her. "We're pressing charges: civil rights violation, unlawful detainment, assault of a minor." "Sir, there's protocol." "No. What you did tonight, that is your protocol. That's the real system. And it's time someone burned that into the public record." He turned to Brandy. "Come on, baby. We're going home." Outside, the streetlights bathed the front steps of the police station in a pale orange hue. Camera crews had already begun gathering. Someone must have leaked that the Attorney General's daughter had been detained. Julian didn't shield her from the cameras. He didn't hustle her into the car. Instead, he let her walk beside him, chin up, wrist bound, step steady. Brandy didn't want to hide. She wanted the world to see her, to see what they did, and what she was about to do next. Because this wasn't over. It was just beginning. They didn't leave the house the next day. Brandy sat on the couch in oversized sweats, her wrapped wrist resting on a pillow, the television muted as news headlines crawled across the bottom of the screen like a slow, boiling fire. Her name wasn't in them, yet, but Julian's was. "Attorney General confronts local police over teen assault," it read. The anchors were cautious, restrained, the kind of neutral tone reserved for political scandals they didn't want to commit to. But the photos had started leaking. A blurry cell phone video. A flash of Brandy's face pressed against the hood of a police car. Her cries barely audible. Someone must have filmed it from a second-story apartment across the street. She hadn't watched it. Couldn't. Julian sat beside her, one leg crossed over the other, eyes on his phone, fingers flying as he answered calls and texts and media requests. Every so often his hand would rest on her shoulder or brush her knee, silent reminders that he was there. But they hadn't really talked. Not about the thing that mattered. Finally, Brandy spoke, her voice quieter than it had been in years. "Do you think people would care if I wasn't your daughter?" Julian didn't answer right away. He locked his phone and set it on the table. He turned to face her. "No," he said. "Not like this." Brandy nodded, eyes still on the blank TV screen. "That's what I thought." But that doesn't mean we let it slide." Her laugh was soft, bitter. "It slides every day, Dad, for people without microphones." Julian leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I've spent my career trying to change the system from inside. I've drafted bills. I've argued for reform. I've tried to appeal to conscience, to reason." He looked at her. "But you're right. None of it means a damn thing if the only reason you're safe is because of my name." "I wasn't safe," she whispered. "I know." She turned to face him now, fully, her voice no longer small. "Then let's stop pretending like press conferences are justice. I want to speak, not as your daughter, as me, a kid who got beat up on the street for walking while black." Julian looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time in years. "I'm calling a press conference for tomorrow morning," he said. "You'll speak first." The news spread like gasoline on concrete. By noon, Brandy's name was trending. By 3, her inbox was full of interview requests, DM'd apologies from classmates, and even a message from the mayor's daughter asking if she was okay. That one made her laugh. The same girl who once said she looked too aggressive in a student council debate now wanted to stand in solidarity. At dinner, she barely touched her food. Instead, she sat at the dining table, drafting her speech on a yellow legal pad with her left hand, the words shaky and slanted, but getting sharper with each pass. Julian watched her from the kitchen. He didn't interrupt. This was her fight now. The next morning, the press packed the city building. Reporters stood shoulder to shoulder, lights glared, microphones trembled on cheap plastic stands. Outside, a crowd gathered, some with signs, some with phones held high, live streaming, waiting. Brandy stood behind the podium, her father at her side, her cast visible beneath the sleeve of a clean white button-up. She didn't wear makeup. Didn't hide the bruise on her cheek. She didn't want polished. She wanted real. The room settled. She cleared her throat. "My name is Brandy Newsome. I'm 17 years old. I'm a student at East Hollow High. I'm the captain of the girls' basketball team, an honors student, and I love science fiction novels and graphic design." A pause. 3 nights ago, I was walking home from school when 2 officers stopped me, threw me against a police cruiser, injured my wrist, and accused me of being aggressive. I was called a suspect before I was asked my name. I was treated like a criminal for existing. Cameras clicked, pens scratched. But they didn't stop because they realized I was innocent. They stopped when I told them who my father was. That's not law. That's fear of power. Julian looked down briefly, jaw tight. Brandy didn't flinch. How many girls have this story but never got to stand here? How many boys didn't get the chance to speak after the cuffs went on? How many names never trended because no one important was watching? Silence. She let it sit. "I'm not here for revenge. I'm here for truth. What happened to me wasn't a fluke. It was a symptom of a system that sees black and assumes threat, a system that trains fear instead of empathy." A murmur rippled through the crowd. "I demand those officers be suspended without pay. I demand this department be audited for bias patterns and stops and arrests. And I demand mandatory anti-bias training for every single officer in the precinct." She looked up from her notes and into the sea of cameras. "I'm not your headline. I'm not your viral moment. I'm not your mistake to sweep under the rug. My name is Brandy Newsome, and I won't be silent." Applause broke out. Not the polite kind. The kind that rose from the back row. From the street outside, from people who'd been waiting for anyone to say what they couldn't. Julian stepped forward, hand on her shoulder. "My daughter said everything I could have. The Attorney General is stepping aside today, not resigning, but standing back so that Brandy leads this dialogue. I'll fight for policy, but she speaks for the people." Later, as the building emptied, a girl about Brandy's age walked up with a notebook clutched to her chest. Her eyes were glassy. "My brother died in police custody last year," she whispered. They said it was his fault. No one believed me. Brandy took her hand. I believe you. And suddenly the girl crumbled into her arms. That moment wasn't on camera, but it was the most powerful of all, because it wasn't just a story anymore. It was a movement. And Brandy, she had just lit the first match. 3 months later, the police department that brutalized Brandy Newsome didn't look the same. It wasn't just the press coverage, though that had been relentless. It wasn't the flurry of public apologies or the forced resignations of both Officers Marconi and Michaels, though both were gone. It wasn't even the lawsuits, the payouts, or the rapid installation of body cameras on every officer in East Hollow. It was the mural, spray-painted across the side of City Hall, standing 30 feet high, was Brandy's face. Eyes forward, jaw steady, her cast still visible, painted in gold. Around her, bold white letters read, "We don't need permission to exist." They unveiled it at a public ceremony, the same space where Julian had first stood next to her in front of the cameras. This time, she stood alone. This time, she didn't need anyone to hold her hand. People were calling her the Spark. Local schools had asked her to speak. Colleges were already emailing her. Even a senator had reached out through her father, offering to fly her to D.C. for a student justice panel. But that wasn't the part she cared about. The part she cared about was the message she got last night. A boy she didn't know, Marcus, from 3 cities over. "Hey, Brandy, I was stopped last week. I told them I knew my rights because of you. I'm okay. Just wanted to say thank you." She read it 3 times, then again, and then she cried in the dark of her room, where no one had to watch her be strong. That was the part no one talked about, the weight of being the one who didn't get killed, the one who got to speak while others became hashtags. But she carried it, for them, for the ones who couldn't. This morning, Brandy stood at her school's front gates, watching her classmates walk through with a strange, warm calm in her chest. Not because they all liked her now. Some still didn't. Some whispered behind her back and rolled their eyes when her name came up. But others had changed. A few teachers had started actually listening when black students spoke up. Some kids who never used to look her in the eye now asked about the youth rights club she'd helped create. And the principal? He gave her full control to organize the first ever Justice Week next semester. Brandy walked through the halls like she owned them. Not in arrogance, in certainty. It wasn't about power, it was about finally being seen. During lunch, her friends crowded around her table as usual. Taylor grinned as she slapped a flyer onto the tray in front of her. "It's official," she said. "The city's letting you host the community town hall at the Civic Center." Brandy blinked. "Wait, what?" "Got the email this morning. I already RSVP'd for both of us. You're giving the keynote, obviously." "I never agreed to." "You will," Taylor said with a smirk, "because this time, they're not giving you the mic. You're taking it." Brandy laughed, shaking her head. "You're annoying, right?" She didn't argue, because she was right. That night, Brandy stood at the Civic Center, watching as families, teachers, city council members, and even 2 new rookie cops took their seats. Julian stood at the back of the room, arms folded, not in worry, but in admiration. He had finally stopped speaking for her. He just made space. The lights dimmed slightly as Brandy walked to the center of the stage. She wasn't nervous, not anymore. That part of her, afraid to make noise, had been left behind on the cold hood of a police cruiser. She cleared her throat. "I want to talk about accountability," she began. "Not just from police, but from all of us." She scanned the crowd. "I used to think staying quiet kept me safe, that following the rules would protect me. But silence didn't stop them. It just made it easier for them to pretend I didn't matter." She paused, letting the words breathe. matter. We matter. And if the system doesn't recognize that, then we change the system. Piece by piece. With every voice, every vote, every step we take towards something better. People nodded. Some clapped. A little boy in the front row sat frozen, his eyes wide like he was watching a real-life superhero. Justice isn't just punishment, Brandy said. It's recognition, dignity, repair. And this time, when the room applauded, it didn't feel performative. It felt like agreement. After the event, people lined up to talk to her. A mother with 2 daughters in braids, an older man with tearful eyes who said he saw the same fire in her that he saw in protesters back in the 60s. Even the new police chief, yes, they had one now, shook her hand and promised the department was undergoing full transparency reviews. Brandy didn't smile too big. She didn't let her guard down. But she nodded, because progress was a process. At home, Julian had ordered pizza, something greasy and ridiculous and comforting. They sat at the kitchen island like they used to, back before the world knew her name. "I'm proud of you," he said. Brandy took a sip of soda and wiped her mouth. "I'm proud of you," she said back. "You've got colleges throwing scholarships at you already, you know. I might not go right away." He raised an eyebrow. "I want to keep working here," she said, "with the club, with the city." He paused, then nodded. "Whatever path you choose, you won't walk it alone." She smiled. Not for the cameras, not for the crowd, just for her dad. A few days later, Brandy was walking downtown when she passed a group of kids staring up at the mural of her face. A little girl turned and pointed. "That's her," she whispered to her brother. Brandy walked by them slowly. The girl's eyes met hers. Brandy gave a soft wave. The girl waved back, grinning. And for the first time, Brandy didn't feel like a symbol. She felt like a beginning. She was no longer just the girl who survived. She was the girl who changed everything. And she wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. She adjusted her backpack and kept walking forward. The city was hers now. And the future was finally listening.